Welcome to Learning cEDH, the podcast dedicated to teaching you everything you need to know about competitive Commander. I'm your host, Matthew, and I'm joined, as always, by my amazing co-host, Eric. And today, you're probably thinking, wait a minute, they don't do episodes this fast. What could have possibly transpired to make them record again this quickly? couldn't be
WrestleMania. No.
couldn't be any kind of gloating or bragging that they want to do today about any feats of or accomplishments. No, today we're going to be talking about Punt City 3, which happened this past weekend, yesterday, really, as of this recording, as well as talking about an event I went to more locally. I wasn't able to get out to Punt City. We'll briefly touch on that. It was a pretty cool event that I think is going to lead to much bigger ones because of the turnout and just how well this event went. I do want to talk about how it was ranked because it was really awesome. And mainly highlighting Eric's top 4 placement in Punt City 3, second seed, basically second overall in the event on Korvold, of course. His Korvold list that you all know and love and have heard so much about. Yeah, so we got a lot to talk about. We know everybody was waiting for it. Of course, I get, the first coverage is always going to be here. Somebody else might want to interview him later, but they get second or third dibs. It's going to be here first.
Yeah, well, first and foremost, I just want to say congratulations to the champion, Tad. Well earned, well deserved. I've told him this. I was very jubilant in how happy I was for him. I know he doesn't get the opportunity to play a lot because he's too busy providing value for us players as a TO and amongst other things. So that's more important to me, is just seeing people like that. And, he was on this, this really bad deck, Cyrog?
Some fringe, deck for Malders who punt, and they cast Final Fortune and lose, and they consult the weather library. I don't know what the deck's trying to do.
I don't blame them. Consult's a good Magic card, but no, seriously, I was really happy to see him as a competitor. Obviously, I would have loved to won that game, but to see somebody like him win, it literally brought joy to my heart. So big congratulations to him. And man, before we hop into me again, let's talk about who made this happen. Top Deck GG. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
First off, so this was my first Punt City, and it was fantastic. In terms of the hotel venue, so they had a room block for the venue that it was in, and just literally 5 minutes, one parking lot apart. I actually stayed at the Hampton because I couldn't get one at the Hilton because they already sold out. It ended up being a little bit cheaper, but it was my room was huge. It was super nice, very clean. It was a fantastic venue. There was some delaying going on, and I just loved how Top Deck handled just that small, that light delay, and they worked diligently to do that, and they kept us, the players, informed with that. So outside of that, the tournament was awesome. Vendors were great. I know Mike Sad was there, Gold was there doing artist stuff, Propaganda was there, having the bling. I was always scoping through the Japanese binders, the coverage team, the judging staff, just everybody involved in production and setup from top to bottom on their side. I just want to say thank you, and I greatly appreciate that.
Fortunately, like I said, I didn't get to get out to there, but every one of these Top Deck events that I've been able to go to has been amazing. Seems like they just get better every single time. They keep getting better at it. The events keep getting bigger, although Punt City has had there's mainly the issue with those events is it's just hard to fit as many people as they want to into the space there. That's why they sell out literally immediately. Seems like they could sell 500 tickets to one of those if they could fit everybody.
And again, I know I said everybody involved. I just want to make sure I say thank you again to the on the floor coverage team. They were fantastic from top to bottom. Alan from Mental Misplay and Nathan Hermit Druid. Just again, thank you so much for that. Us players, we greatly appreciate that because, again, there's an infamous video that we said, man, we would like to see floor coverage. And somehow that was controversial. Look at there. We have it. And it's great. And it's improved.
Yeah, and the commentators. I didn't get to watch a lot of it because I was playing day 2 and was testing a lot day 1 during coverage. I was trying to keep up with it. But Drake Sasser on the mic, Lauren throughout the day, Scoots was on there. Maybe I don't know if there was a fourth somewhat. Those are the only ones that I saw. But all the commentators, great job. Lauren with the ridiculous puns and terrible jokes, always appreciated. Keep doing that. Always love it. With all that being said, we're going to move this along, we're going to be, I think first we're going to talk about my event because it was shorter, 1 day event. I wasn't as many rounds, so I only have like one real story I want to tell through my games. Touch on that one, just kind of get that out of the way, and then get into Eric's experience at Punt City, the deck list, how much he popped off and went crazy. Real quick, want to thank our sponsor, TopDeck.gg, that we've already talked about greatly today, as well as all of the Lemora's Cards patrons over on Patreon. You guys have been great. There's more tournament coverage happening because I'm obviously covering this event, even though the top 16 is like all Tim Necroms and then like the people who actually top forward. And and then probably gonna try to cover the event I attended this week if those lists go up. So I will have some of the patron submitted deck lists that I get to go over in those videos. And I think with all that being said, we can hop into it. Use the link in the description below to download Whatnot, and you'll get $15 to use to buy Magic singles, sealed product, get anything that you want, really. There's no limits. You just get $15 on the account for free just for signing up. This is one of the best ways you can support the channel. And again, it's just free stuff. Use the link in the description below. Give Whatnot a try. Welcome to TopDeck.gg, your community's home for everything competitive Magic has to offer. Whether you're hosting an event, playing for a huge prize, or trying to advertise your store to thousands of players, we've got you covered. Using intuitive pairing software, playing Magic is a breeze. All your players have to do is sign up online, then scan the QR code in store. Give your competitors the gift of perfect information as their bracket updates in real time. Then, when the match is decided, our self-reporting software saves you time and leaves paper match slips in the past. Leave the heavy lifting to us so your community can sit back, relax, and have a great day of playing Magic. My little baby event I went to. But yeah, I attended cEDH Staples Blue 1, I think was the full name. It was ran by Appalachian Gaming League, which is around this area. And they've put on, I think this is the fourth of these events. They did one for white, black, and red before this, where the prize, I think the prize for this was Judge Foils of Intuition, Rhystic Study, Mana Drain, Force of Will, and other blue card. There's 5 blue card Judge Foils. Pretty good prize. I felt, and then like top 16 support was good too. And then you also got the top 16, everyone top 16 got foil borderless Psych Rifts, and everyone on top 4 got Fierce Guard, or I think it was foil full art, Fierce Guardianships, Force Negations, and another card. Like the prize support was actually really good. And then everyone who entered got an MH2 pack also. And then you got all of these as you went up. So like the winner got the 5 cards, the Fierce Guardianship, and the Force Negation, all that, and the Psych Rift. So like first place especially was like super stacked. But I felt like it was pretty fair all throughout. Like if you top 16, you pretty much, came out even and you got to play a lot of Magic. Well, I didn't because
That's awesome.
I ID'd my way up. But some people got to play a lot of Magic. But yeah, it was a 5 rounds, cut the top 16, top 4, typical. And I got to play a deck that I have been talking up a lot, but haven't played in events because last week we talked about I played in the CCS 1K and played TNK in top 16 with that. But I was like, that deck's boring, and I want to get actual reps on a cool deck. So I was playing Rograkh, and Rograkh was kind of like a deck that kind of popped off this weekend a little bit. It didn't top in Punt City, but it had like a lot of representatives who were like a winning in short or even like a draw short of getting there. There were a lot of people in that like 32-ish and above or slightly below range who were playing Rograkh. And yeah, it's a deck that's been like kind of building up some steam, and it's been really sick, and it went wild for me this weekend. It did some really cool stuff. To my knowledge, the number's like 66 player event, so it will be like on top deck and it's a whatever tier event. I don't know how that stuff works. But what was really cool was also it was kind of like partially outside. It was basically in like a like farmers market type thing, it's like a big building, but it's kind of open, what I'm saying. And at first it was like kind of chilly, but as it warmed up, it was fine. And then they were just like cooking hamburgers like right there and serving up hamburgers for everybody. It was super sick. It was actually really awesome. And they had talked about how they want to do, because the turnout was like way better. They had like doubled turnout, and for some of these and they're talking about how they might want to be doing like 2-day events for the next one. They definitely had space for it. They could have easily fit like 120 or whatever players in there. And I hope they do that, like the 2-day events. That would be sick.
That sounds awesome. Like I would have loved to been able to like snag a hamburger, probably no bun in between rounds because that's a lot of filler for me. I'd be sleepy.
I was glad to get to eat because we didn't get to eat breakfast. Played round 1, and then they were cooking hamburgers. And like when I finished my round 1, I was like, this is literally perfect. Like I said, I played really only 3 games outside of all my IDs. We played the games out, but we just, we drew. Game 1, second seat. We had some issues with the top deck software because it got updated in the middle of the event, and we changed seats like 4 times before we actually played. It was like TNK, me, Sisse, Jetmir. TNK land passes, I Mystic Remora pass. People fed my fish. They're like 2 mana crypts, I think, and like a talisman or something. Because no, it was Esper Sentinel over here. Because freaking TNK's turn 2 on the play is land, dockside for 4, cast Thassa's Oracle, Tainted Patch, and they didn't vamp tutor turn 1. They just land pass, didn't do anything. They just had this in their hand. Thassa's Oracle, Tainted Pact. I had the Force of Will pitching, whatever. Yeah, so then it just kind of slowed from there where I just like slowly developed. It was actually a pretty slow game for Rograkh. It's more of a turbo deck. But I just sat behind my fish. Sisse kind of got ahead, kind of skipping through things. Jetmir started to get a pretty good board where eventually Sisse got a Ristic down. Jetmir kind of fed it a little bit to get a Winota into play. Got 2 Winota triggers. They didn't really hit anything great. I think they hit a Boromir and then the other one was a whiff. And then I made a deal with them to let them get in with their Ragavan if they would let me get in with mine. On their instep, after kind of feeding it, they went to do something else, and we were like, please don't feed anymore. And they're like, no. Beseju, Ristic Study. And I was like, okay, thank God. And then they had Aven Mind Sister to kind of shut out Sisse. We get back to me. I'm able to attack with Ragavan, hit nothing useful, tap out to cast Machine God's Effigy using the treasure and my 3 mana, copy the Kinnan that Sisse has in play, tap Machine God's Effigy because it's not a creature. People keep missing that in my games that I play. Machine God's Effigy is never a creature. And it triggers Kinnan too, which is really sick because you Machine God's Effigy, copy Kinnan, and then you tap Kinnan to make 2 blue mana. Cast Imposter Mech, copying the Dockside Extortionist, make 4 treasures that make 8 mana. Crack 2 treasures, cast Temur Sabertooth. Opponent has to crack their Boromir to enable a Mindbreak trap. And then I have Pact of Negation that gets turned on by the Boromir crack. And then go infinite. It was post-combat, so I had to do make infinite mana and then Atali and play everybody's cards. And they don't have any decks, and I just win the game with their win cons.
That's pretty sick. Does that deck have Eternal Witness, Lightning Bolt?
Yeah, you can do that too.
Yeah. I mean, like, we'll go over this when we go over my stuff. It's like, once you're in that position with the infinite mana, you can do whatever you want.
Yeah, especially if you have, like, infinite mana and a way to bounce, flicker, whatever, any ETB effect that's relevant. Like, that's, like, Sam Black cut Sabertooth and kept in Baron. I cut Baron and kept in Sabertooth because Sabertooth as a way to just make sure I barely need anything other than mana, and it's just a guaranteed win. I don't need any specific cards. If it can be Atali, if it can be a clone on a Bowmaster, if it can be whatever, eventually I'll get there and we'll make sure that there's a win. And then Baron, there's just like an extra step, and I don't know. I hate that card also. The dockside count's never 5. It's just never 5.
In Baron an X1?
Yeah, it's like a 1/1.
Just dies to Bowmaster.
Yeah.
Like,
the other thing I don't, and then Temur Sabertooth notably doesn't die when you're doing its thing. It's indestructible.
I haven't had a chance to relook at the list. Is it also on Invasion of Ikoria?
I'm currently not. My friend
Sam on it?
Sam is not. My friend who also brought the list and also topped with it was on Invasion.
It makes sense because I mean it literally gets your combo pieces. So
yeah, it gets most of them. It doesn't get Kinnan is like the biggest one that in terms of combo piece. It doesn't get any half of the Kinnan combo. And it doesn't get Spellseeker. It's probably worth a slot. Not really sure what. I basically ran like Tezzeret in that slot.
Oh yeah, that's pretty reasonable.
And it won me round 2 in the round that I really want to talk about. Round 1, kind of uneventful. I got the win. Had to play a little bit slower. Round 2, I'm going 3rd behind Paco and Halden, Yidris, me going 3rd, Obnix behind me, another local Zay from my store that I rode up with. We all top 16, which was awesome. Everybody came with topped. And then that game was like turn 1 Paco immediately flipped and exiled the Yidris player's Thassa's Oracle. And we found out like immediately they had Tainted Pact in hand and they just would have had the win. The Halden The Paco went insane. The Paco immediately was like hit someone for like 7, flipped 3 cards it could actually cast, or once Paco came down. Yidrish player goes turn 1 Waste Not. Immediately I'm just like, what's happening? And I went like turn 1. I kept a really sus hand that was all mana. You don't usually want to do that, but I think I had mulled a little bit and felt like in my seat position, I would be probably a bit more likely to do a Thrasios game plan, even though the deck's not really built to do it. So my hand was like, what did I do? It was like land, Mox Diamond, discard a land, trigger Waste Not. They made double black, which they used to Tainted Pact before I passed the turn. And then I went like Wild Growth, and I think I might have Wild Growth and Fertile Ground a land. Just like tons of mana, and then like Candelabra. Like I just threw up my hand basically onto the board, and then had like a kind of Thrasios lands game plan. We kind of go through some things. Paco and Halden takes over a bit. Ob comes down turn 1 because there's land jeweled Lotus Ob like always. What was crazy though was nobody thought Waste Not would matter, but I went Mox Diamond. He had a relevant spell to use for the double black. The next player, the Ob, also goes Mox Diamond, discard a land, and then he has Bowmasters. So both times the Waste Not immediately got value and had double black to just do the thing. And the Bowmasters was very relevant. So we keep going. Ob gets kind of ahead. I just have mana and Thrasios. We managed to get through like an Ob turn that could have stormed off into something. Paco and Halden untaps with a ton of cards from Paco, cast the Halden. One thing I didn't know is that Paco mana fixes, so he was able to go Mana Vault, use the colorless for Mana Vault to cast Eldritch Evolution. I'm thinking we just lose, but apparently Paco and Halden's win cons are usually a little awkward, and they're usually like extra turn stuff, and they go like Eldritch Evolution, Paco into Consphinx, which is scary, but it's not. I thought I was going to get untap. Consphinx hits the board. We go to the Yidrish player's turn. They have Bowmasters in play. They cast Time Twister. Now the Consphinx player, I have known Force of Will, but Consphinx player is never going to let me undo it, and they have known Fierce that I can't beat. Me and the Ob are just like, oh, okay, we don't get to win this game. We don't get to play. Why would you Time Twister? Which, you have a Bowmaster in play, but whatever. But there's also an Ob in play. So it resolves. Twister happens. We all draw 7. There are 21 Consecrated Sphinx triggers on the stack. 21 Bowmaster triggers on the stack. I have to politic very hard here to explain to the Yidrish player that their Bowmaster triggers basically need to go, the first ones that resolve need to kill Ob Nixilis, and then the rest need to pressure the Consphinx player so that he can't draw his whole deck. I'm able to politic it out to where that kind of happens. And then the Ob player is also in agreement with me. He's saying like, you have to kill my Ob and try to pressure his life total. We managed to talk through that. That happens. And I'm just on pure damage control. Consphinx player starts drawing, resolving his triggers. When those Bowmaster triggers happen, at first they're going at him until he casts the Veil of Summer. Not much we can do about that. He just has a bunch of stuff. Known fear still. Then I have to politic and say, look, he's going to win the game because he's drawing his whole deck, basically. The only way that you and I can have any chance in this game, or you specifically, the Bowmaster player, can have a chance in this game is if you trigger Ob off of every single one of those draws. So you need to start pinging one of the two of us. And I even tell him, the thing that tie broke it for him, I think, was like, I was just like, hit me. Just ping me every single time so that Ob can get cards, because there's no way your cards are going to be Ob just jamming wins down your throat. You're not going to have enough counter spells because he was tapped out. The guy with the Consphinx. You're tapped out. Ob had 17 treasures or something, or like 12 treasures from a dockside. There's no way you're going to win. So I was just trying to force a draw. Just say, keep hitting me and you'll eventually have to stop drawing. There's no way you're going to win. You guys want to accept a draw. This is basically the only thing that's going to happen here. Or you give the game to Ob, what's going to happen. They did want to draw. We do that. Eventually the Consphinx player stops drawing because they get some free interaction, and they don't want to keep feeding the Ob. I managed to get a turn somehow at like 11 life. I put on like an Emmy award-winning performance. I got twisted into a new hand. I go, lands. All I have is Thrasios and some mana in play. I basically say to the table, well, I think all I can really do is set up and try to hope I get a turn. Cast Shrieking Drake, bouncing Thrasios to my hand. Everybody's just like, okay. Neoform Shrieking Drake. Everybody's like, sure. Put it into a Devoted Druid. I have 5 mana, I think-ish available. And then I say, okay, well, I think I have to set up for next turn and try just not to die. So I think I need to just get the 1 ring and get protection and not lose. It's like, I keep saying this out loud, like, I think I need to do this. I think I need to get 1 ring. So I cast Tezzeret the Seeker. When I put Tezzeret on the stack, and the Ob player says, wait, Tezzeret doesn't cast it, right? He just puts it into play. And I go like, oh my God, I'm throwing this game. And then they're all just like, Tezzeret resolves. Tezzeret hits the battlefield. -4 Machine God's Effigy.
Oh, you just baited him.
-4, Machine God's Effigy, Infinite Blue and Green, cast Thrasios from hand. Doesn't matter. If you counter him a million times, I have the blue and green. I can just keep casting him. Then I have to explain to the Bowmaster player that my infinite draws won't matter because you'll never hit me. I'll draw on top of the trigger and then I'll Veil of Summer with all my counter spells in hand. And then I will finale kill you guys or a Tolly or whatever. There were literally like 60 cards between my 3 opponents, and I snuck in the win with Neoform Shrieking Drake into Tezzeret Machine God's Effigy.
cEDH staple Shrieking Drake.
He did it. And I only run like 3 1-drops in the deck, or 4 1-drops in the deck. And it had to be one of them. And yeah, the Shrieking Drake.
No, that card's sweet.
He got me there. Yeah, there for Earthcraft stuff. He's not there to Neoform and bounce my Thrasios, but hey, sometimes that's the line.
No, that's sweet. That's pretty cool. You got to be careful now. You're starting to sound like a yapper a little bit, you know? You yapping, trapping? What's going on?
Which I really don't. Like I said, the deck is like turbo, lands, mana, and I did a lot of that, but I didn't really hit a payoff. But that game was pure politics. There was Obnixilis cast a Dockside. I think the count was 9. I have a blue card in hand. I have Snap in hand. I activate Thrasios in response to Dockside, reveal Force of Will, pass on the Dockside because I don't think he has it. And I that game was just me really just trying to weigh what's going on at the table. I truly believe the Obnix with 2 cards in hand doesn't quite have it. And if they do, the odds that they beat Force of Will without any, like, there's no way to generate Ob triggers. I was just like, no, I think I just have to let this resolve. And then he just went for like I think he played a Twin Flame and then like a Necro and got a bunch. And I'm just like, no, I think I'm going to lose to this Paco and Halden. I just have to keep this Force of Will. It's like, I don't care how much mana you have. That's Paco and Halden's problem. And I just like stayed the course and was just like, nope, not using anything. Get around, politic through the Bowmaster thing. And then, just truly yapped my way to a win that I had no business ever getting.
That's awesome.
I just ID'd my way up and went in like second in the standings up to top 16. I played out most of the ID games and the deck actually did what it was supposed to do. I went like, turn 1, set 6 mana, Twister, play a Halfling. Turn 2, Thrasios, Chord for 7, Hullbreaker Horror, cast Dosin, start the Hullbreaker loop. Another game I played in for Fun Pod was like pretty similar, like turn 1, I think double Aura on a land or something similar, netting some mana, just kind of dumped my hand. Somebody wheeled. I wheeled into Rhystic and Mystic, cast some stuff, made a bunch of mana, blew up somebody else's Rhystic, went to my turn. There was a turn where I had like, I had to Pact of Negation, and I had the mana to pay for Fish for 3, pay for Pact of Negation, and also spend like 5 mana on my turn, because that's how the deck works. And then just kind of played the control game. Anybody tried to do anything, they drew me cards. And then like turn 4 or 5-ish, something like that, I just cast Dosin. Table fought over it a little bit. There's like Force here, Red Blast, Mind Break Trap, Pyro Blast. And then the other player showed the other 2 players an answer that they had. I immediately interpreted that as that's an Otawara. I had Deflecting Swat in hand. I was just like, okay, Dosin Resolve. And then I was just like, before I even cast anything, I was like, does your thing beat Deflecting Swat? And he was like, no. I showed the SWAT. And I was just like, okay, Hullbreaker Horror. Because again, I had mana to do all of that. Hullbreaker Horror, cast Dosin, cast the 2 Red Blast, start the spell loop with a spell that actually costs mana in my hand, and then you have Roger and Soul Ring or any rock, and it doesn't matter. Like, it's just, you just do it. That's what the deck's trying to do, is that kind of massive mana nonsense that just overwhelms everybody with garbage. Top 16 game, we just got turned to by Rog. I kept like an MBT hand. I was on the play, had to mold to 4. It's the only time the deck really like felt like there's like the fail rate of the deck, and then we kind of got. They played around my MBT. Apparently accidentally turn 1, but on turn 2, I think knowingly, because they just, of course, you're going to slam Defense Grid first before you do anything else. And then they got there on like they had to win their Crypt roll because they had Necro down to, with a Final Fortune. First Necro went down to like 20. Second Necro went down to like 4. Final Fortunes, has to Vamp Tutors the line, and then has to win the Crypt roll, and then wins it, and is able to put together still a bit of a manual line, but it's like pretty deterministic as long as the consult doesn't exile Thoracle in the top 6. And yeah, that was the top 16.
No, that's sweet. I'm glad this. So the deck basically, for the most part, did its thing. It got to do lots of cool stuff. Exploited 2 low cost commanders with like that really kind of that. I don't necessarily want to say like the ROG side package of artifacts, but effectively that. But one thing that this deck does, and correct me if I'm wrong, is it leverages the green cards that also tutor for Cradle. Because it's a good Cradle deck, right?
Yeah, I think it's the best Cradle deck. I don't know what other.
Ooh.
Because one, you have, with 2 mana, you cast your commanders, you went mana neutral with Cradle in play. Just off your
Yep.
commanders in play. We run a whole lot more creatures than that. We run untappers. We're on like Manamo. We're on Cloud of Fairies, Snap, of course. You can do Snap Ewit, Cradle. We're on Expedition Map, which has actually been a card I was a little suspicious of, but was actually really nice in that, one, most of the time it's mana positive or neutral with Cradle. If you spend 3 mana on map, get Cradle, play it. Cradle's probably for 3 usually. And then also I really like the flexibility of play the map, hold it up, and then tutor for Beseiju or Otawara in response to something.
That's pretty cool.
Because it doesn't put it into play. It's actually really nice. With that, normally, like, if it put Cradle into play, it'd be slightly better. But being able to put Beseiju and Otawara into your hand, Otawara is, I think every time I've played it, has only been a blue. The worst case scenario is usually 1 in a blue because, Rog and Thras. And then Beseiju's always a green because we're Roger boys. But yeah, it breaks traditional cEDH mana with the rocks and stuff. We run all of that. And then it also breaks land mana because we have Cradle. We're doing Fertile Ground, Wild Growth, and Utopia Sprawl as enchantments that go on lands. We're running Earthcraft. Earthcraft is like the most busted mana production card in the deck. I played Earthcraft, I think, once in the event. On an in-step, I fetched for a basic forest. Everybody looked at me like I didn't know what I was doing. And I was like, no, guys, I promise it's good. Played Earthcraft, tapped for 2, played a Devoted Druid. I had more mana. So the Earthcraft made me 3 mana the turn I played it. The turn I untapped with it, it made me like 7 mana because I'm just casting creatures, using them to cast more creatures, just with the 1 forest in play. And then if you have any mana like aura thing on a basic land, you go mana positive, you go infinite with Shrieking Drake. You just play the Drake, untap a land that can tap for like a blue and any other color. You net infinite mana. The deck is like, and I think Shrieking Drake is just hot in the deck too because it's a dockside doubler. Like, it's basically an alchemist retrieval that just doesn't, instead of our other mode being pay to bounce somebody else's thing, the other mode is win the game with it being just a combo piece. Yeah, the deck is awesome. It's like the most fun deck I've played. It's really cool.
No, that's good. I'm glad to hear that. That sounds pretty awesome. And is this going to be a deck that you're going to continue to pursue to work on right now?
Yeah, that was the main thing. Because I think I told my friends that I went with that I think my highest chance to win the event was on TNK because just pure number of reps. And like that deck being, there were no slots in TNK where I would be questioning anything, right? Like, I'd be going to the event like, this is the list that I'm going to bring. You have like, for my list, there's like 1 or 2 flex slots, I think, in terms of like how I want the deck to play. Rograkh, my friend and I, we both went in with slightly different builds. And I was changing it like up to before, like Dosen was a relatively new addition for the list that I really liked. Because in testing, there were games where if I could get a Dosen, I just win the game. Like, there was a turn where I got to, again, the deck makes so much mana. It was like a turn 2, turn 3 win attempt or whatever. I Eldritch Evolution. Somebody activates Thrasios in response or plays something in response. I chord for X equals 3 on top of that. If I was able to get Dosen, I just win the game. But Dosen wasn't in the list at the time. And I was like, God, that would have been a hot spot. Like, if I just slam a Dosen there, it's just like, God, this would be the coolest deck ever. And then also, yeah, you've talked about like creature tutors and Dosen being just such a ridiculous option to be like, because I'm one of those. I mean, we just talked about how much I yapped my way to a win. I'm the kind of person, when I cast a creature tutor like an Eldritch Evolution, I mention the dockside count, even though I have no intention of getting a dockside extortionist. That's the type of yapping that I like to do.
Yeah. And the fact that you can disguise the Dosen like under an Eldritch Evolution or those type of things, like, Neoform obviously gives a little bit more of a read, but like, yeah, even Finale, you can Finale for 3 if you have the extra mana, and maybe you are getting a dockside, or you really want the Dosen because you already have the dockside. It's just having that ability is really nice. And it's a legend, which works with Relic of Legends. So
another good card in the deck. I will say, so Sam's list, Sam Black original list, is the one that we took inspiration from, of course. I really like his approach to the build. He was on like Lorien Revealed and Int. I cut Lorien Revealed. I don't know if it was right. The Int didn't come up in tournament, but the land cyclers have actually just felt pretty good. The basic land package of like Vista, Basic Forest, Basic Island felt appropriate. I never had an Earthcraft without a basic. You can usually just prioritize one. We're basically a blue-green deck. We splash red. So it's not that often that you have issues with your colors. I think it's actually pretty rare. I've liked all of that package. He's on a few other things and he cut a few of the things because there is currently in the build some tension where some cards don't overlap very well. Paradise Mantle, Springleaf Drum, Relic of Legends, Earthcraft, Port of Calling, all of those kind of work on the same axis of breaking mana, so they don't overlap very well. If I have a Relic of Legends and a Wild Growth in play, Earthcraft in play, I mean, they don't really work together very well. That doesn't really double my mana. And the same can be said with like when you're at a low creature count, Paradise Mantle and like Springleaf Drum can be awkward. Rockside players know what I'm talking about, especially over there where they have fewer creatures. Here, that's mainly an issue in the early turns. And then Court of Calling also being like my tap mana. That card's like relatively inefficient if the creatures are going to be tapped for mana anyways. So right. he cut Cord. He cut Temur Sabertooth, things like that. I went with the whole package. There were only a few times where it kind of changed what I wanted to do and it didn't give me a lot of mana, but it's like I have 1 million mana anyways. Like, sure, I can't make 1 million, 2 million mana or something with doubling up. But one of the busted synergies I haven't really got to do in a deck that I got to do the game I talked about with my like Rhystic Mystic, 1 million mana, cast the dose, whatever, was the combination of Paradise Mantle and Kinnan is absurd when you have a lot of creatures. When you have a lot of creatures without Summoning Sickness, just tap down Kinnan, make 2 mana, spend 1 mana, move the mantle, make another mana, move the mantle, make another mana. Like, Paradise Mantle becomes one of the best rocks. It's another one of those just boop, 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 tap all my creatures down, they all net mana. Yeah, so I think the list isn't optimized, and you saw at Punt City 3 some different builds of the deck that are, like, in some cases, pretty different from mine. Also do well, that, again, pretty different, and so we'll see if it irons out, if there's like one list really overperforms and does differently. But yeah, I expect this deck, I think we talked about it a little bit last week, or maybe we didn't record that part, but I expect this deck to be like popular this year and be like a real contender that you expect to see a lot more of. And I'll stop getting asked like, oh, is it a polymorph deck? Because like, no, I'm not going to do polymorph. We're green. Let me use green. Half the green cards are bad. Like all the broken green cards in a polymorph deck don't do anything. Not a polymorph fan.
Yeah, you don't get to run the like all the good great green tutors and stuff, the finales, the Eldritch Evolutions, those type of things. That's awesome. No, I'm glad to hear it. I know you said it was a smaller tournament, but that's still 2 top 16s this year, bud. You know what I mean?
We always count and cover, 64 plus events and whatever. So like this was one of those. I count it, it counts for me. And then I enjoyed the last one too, but that last one was like a 40-ish player event. And I got to do it on Rograkh. So much cooler than doing it on Temnocrom. Come on now. But all right, I think that's enough of our event, or my event rather, that I played in. Let's talk about Korvold and Punt City 3 and what went down.
All right, disclaimer. Matt's probably going to have to edit this out. If my eyes kind of close a little bit, it's because I haven't slept since 5:30 Sunday morning. Literally, Matt messaged me and goes, hey, are we recording today? I go, hell yeah, I just got home from a flight, no sleep. Let me hit a shower and let's do it. So I literally like blow dried my hair, took a quick shower, blow dried my hair, ate a protein bar, threw on Korvold shirt, and rocking and rolling. So I might be a little disoriented. So please, give me some grace. I did play 9 rounds of Magic this weekend. It was awesome. But without further ado, I just want to kind of quickly go through the rounds. And for anyone who's listening, I'm not going to really talk about all my individual opponents, what they're playing, what they're on. I'm just going to give a quick synopsis of how the game went. Round 1, basically look at my first 7. Samana, it's got lands, Deathrite Shaman, Orcish Bowmaster, Wheel. And I'm against Derevi, Rogsai, who mulligan pretty low, and Malcolm Bruce, who also kind of mulliganed low. And I was like, okay, so kill the Rog, cuts off all their stuff, all their mana. Got it. Derevi, just eat their board. I don't know how this deck, I'm assuming it has the Underworld Bridge combo, but it also, I guess, has Glenhorn Buccaneer. Right, yeah, cool. Just don't let Malcolm do its thing. Without sounding like discrediting, and I just basically was just like, cast Bowmaster, eat Esper Sentinel, untap, wheel, wipe the board, attack with a giant token. Bowmaster controlled the entire game. And I purposely left the Malcolm player alive at 2. So I should have just left him at 1, but left him at 2. Nobody was expecting that from Korvold. Like, seriously, that they were just like, oh, he's going to Korvold and Dockside. No, I actually just kind of controlled the game. In fact, I played more interaction than all the other opponents. More interaction, more kill spells, more blast, deflecting swats. And it got to a point to where ultimately the Derevi player couldn't activate the One Ring in fear of me just basically because they would have Derevi triggers and just kill them. I just kept removing Derevi and their pieces. Finally, we removed the Malcolm player. They went for an Emil combo. They're tapped out, and they were just getting ready to like untap and goes, yeah, I win. And I go, whoa, hold on. Emil targets Derevi? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, no mana available? Cool. Deflecting SWAT. Change your target to your Delny. Yeah, I just target and it just blinked the Delny and just they're tapped out. And then untap started doing some stuff. I forgot what they played on me. It was a mental misstep on my Vampiric Tutor, but I had enough, like a lot of sacrifice materials. So I just cast Final Fortune on tap and went for it again. And that's pretty much how the game was. I would say the most important thing about the game is that my token got bounced. And it was like close to a 30-30 token. I only drew out one piece of interaction from them. I just cast like a red, like I think it was like a red or a Pyroblast or something like that. And I was holding the deflecting SWAT. And then when they stopped that, so when they used a counter on that as well, it was important for me because I drew out 2 pieces of blue interaction on them versus like my token. And they have blockers now. The game's not about my big token at all. The game is about, because at this point, I have a Korvold and I have a Bowmaster, so and tons of material. So I just knew like when to pick my spot. It's tempting just to stop him with the deflecting SWAT and hit him really big, but that doesn't do anything. That's not how I'm going to win.
Yeah.
So I just patiently held the deflecting SWAT, and you're going to find out that's kind of like a theme around this weekend. And then proceeded to get into an Underworld Breach line. That was round 1. Won on a sweet Final Fortune turn. And I didn't realize how impactful Tainted Pack and Final Fortune was going to be this weekend. We go to round 2. I'm playing against some lovely gentlemen that are very, very kind. I can't remember what hand I kept. I'll be honest with you. You can go back on my Twitter feed and look at it. They all 3 mulled pretty low. Sisse had a really good mulligan. Like, they just like mana, Sisse, like just out of the gate. The game got to a point to where everybody only had 1 card in their hand. So my 3 opponents, my opponent who's about to pass to me plays Italian. I know I'm about to Ad Nauseam. I'm going to untap Ad Nauseam. So I don't want the Italian on the battlefield. It's coming in through a Cavern of Souls. So I have to let it resolve, pick its number, and then I have to blast it. And then if they counter my blast, then that kind of lets me know what's happening. Blast eats the Italian heat. And then, they were wondering, well, what are you worried about the Italian? I'm just like, target your Italian. Like, I'm not explaining my play in the middle of resolving a spell. So just forewarning, we can talk about that after the game because I know what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to untap and win the game. Like, I played faced up pretty much all weekend. That's just how I do things. Untap, knew exactly what I could play around. I'm going to be able to play around Mindbreak Trap because I'm only have to cast 2 total spells. Second would be Ad Nauseam. Tapped out, 1 card a hand in each, basically. Literally, only 1 card each. Has to be Fierce Guardianship. Go for the Ad Nauseam, it's Fierce Guardianship. And I was like, no worries. I will actually rebuild the next turn and go for a breach line. I had the material to do that. So I was like, cool, the deck's feeling strong. They untap, literally like hit me perfect with the Ragavan to hit a Rite of Flame, which gave them the right stuff because they had Agatha Soul Cauldron and they were able to like do the thing. And I was like, wow, that's yeah, Ragavan hits were pretty good both times. I was like, wow, that's pretty nice. And because that's what they kind of opened up with. I think they opened up with like a Turn 1 Ragavan or something like that. And then like into a Sisse. And I was like, huh. Yeah, so we lost. Congratulations to them. They got me. And then I started like going, should I have been patient? I was like, no, they have 1 card in their hand.
Yeah, no, jam.
It's Sisse Tayam Italian, which by the way, gross, by the way. That's just not
That
fun.
is really gross.
But yeah, so I lost that one. No big deal. I did exactly what I wanted to do. I presented an early win attempt and had backup. Cool. Oddly, I would like to have had that protected, but
do you think you should have, like looking back on it, held up the blast for the Nas turn, or did you not have mana for Nas and blast? You had 5 mana?
Only had exactly 5 mana. I forgot what it was. I needed to draw a land at any turn. That's what it was. I only had 2 lands and some rocks, and I think a dork. So I only had 1, 2, 3, 4 monkey in my hand for 5. If I already had the 3rd land in my hand, I would have not worried about Talion, and I would have just did the thing, let Talion draw a card, and then had the blast just in case. And then at that point, if my Nas resolves, I'm gonna just find a removal spell, remove the Talion.
That's the thing. You get to kind of like do it either way. It works out.
Yeah, and go for it like that. Didn't work out. That's okay. That's magic. Round 3 was a pretty interesting round. Eric, aka Deverick, a Quark Sakashima player, and Yuriko the Tiger Shadow, the player who topped at Cookout. I can't remember a lot of this game outside of Devrick. Feels like he's just beating us up pretty bad.
Was he on Rockside or Nijila?
Yeah, just on Rogsai, and he definitely understood the schematics of the pod and like what to do. Like there was like a wheel or and stuff like that, and then like a Niv Mizzet got discarded from Clark Sakashima, and I was like, juicy, I have an animate dead, and not a lot counters that, so I went to animate dead it. It got Fierce Guardianship, and I'm like with the Clark out, and I'm like, of course, like it doesn't matter at this point.
Yeah, it happens.
Just got me. Yeah, I mean, I got like countered twice from like Krark and stuff, but like Devrick went for some insane stuff, and then the Krark, and it was looking like it was going to be like a game-winning situation, and the Krark Sakashima player cast Pact of Negation, and they couldn't pay for it. So that ensued some conversation. They wanted to do it because they believed that it gave them a % chance better to look for a draw.
Yeah.
And then I understand their point of view, but I also understand Devrick's point of view. You have 2 turbo decks and a Yuriko Tiger Shadow that already tried to win with Thassa's Oracle combo and got stuffed. So the Thassa is just on the battlefield, and they've already used Demonic Consultation, so they would have to have mana, bounce the Thassa, and draw into Tainted Pact. So that wasn't going to happen probably anytime soon. And on their upkeep to the trigger, they Cyclonic Rift targeted Devrick's Mystic Remora, which was actually the Yuriko Tiger Shadows player because it was off a meme bet, and targeted the Soul Ring, which was mine. And again, that ensued some stuff.
Yeah.
So I let them sort that out. It didn't happen. It got bounced back to their hand, and they died. So then it comes to Yuriko. They DT for a Mausoleum
Wanderer?
Yes, they DT for a Mausoleum Wanderer for interaction, and it gives them an attacker. Without sounding like a total, bonehead, I resolved an ad nauseum, and I didn't have a clear line. I also understood Devrick's position, and I also understand the caliber of player of Devrick. So he's on Rogside. He has a Mystic Remora in play. There's no sub game I am going to get to play unless I just have like a clear line to win, like with a Technomancer, which I didn't. That's going to allow me to fight him off if he goes to his turn. So either I don't feed him cards, which he has a pretty good board set up anyways, mana, resources, all this other stuff, or I just basically, I'm going to shove. That's the way I look at it. Like my biggest point was picking my spots, being patient, and being patient doesn't mean playing slow. There's a difference. Also, I built this deck very specifically for this weekend. I wanted the deck to do basically Reach, Adnaz, Dockside. That's it. No Dualcaster Mage, no Saw in Half, no Twin Flame, none of this other like cute auxiliary stuff. I wanted to always have Nas, Necro. I played Pier. It's not going to stay in. Never casted it. Never needed it. Mostly just because I wanted to see, try to jam, even though the games went a little bit longer than I'd like. But the deck performed quite well into the long games for all the true believers out there. And I just played a defense grid. And then, of course, it's like, oh, but if you don't win, then you give it to the Rogside player. I go, Rogside is going to win regardless of the defense grids in play or not, because you don't have anything.
Yeah, if they untap, they just...
Yeah, so it doesn't matter. Like, some people don't understand that. You don't have anything. You can't interact. More than likely.
Yeah, when you're DTing for Mausoleum Wanderer, that's kind of the vibe that I'm getting.
And you had to use the Mausoleum Wanderer to make me use a mana for my Ad Nauseam, which I had plenty of mana at this time. So I went go for broke. The Ad Nauseam, by the way, Ad Nauseam got me like rocks, a Carpet of Flowers that's going to make 2 mana, Rain of Filth, which is making me like 4 mana. So I had all this like kind of churn to get me where I'm going. And I basically generated tons of mana, found the Dockside, played a Grinding Station, milled the Dockside in my graveyard because I had to put it on top, reanimate the Dockside, make tons of mana, cast Wheel of Fortune. At this point, my deck is like this big. I have not hit DT. I have not hit like basically any tutor that could just go get Breach or Breach itself or another wheel because I was running 2 wheels or like Technomancer, stuff like that, Tainted Pact, whatnot. So I go, well, I just fed Rogside all these cards, right? But guess what? They're all gone now. They're back to 7. If I didn't feel confident, I would have been responsible and destroyed my own defense grid. Mm-hmm. But I'm trying to win. I'm going to go for it at this particular juncture because it's a 3-player pod, 2 turbo decks, and a Yuriko deck that didn't really have a lot going on. And I just I gambled for a Breach, got it. Rest is history. So, all right. So that was round 3. Now let's go to round 4. I forgot what seat order, but it is Thrasfile, Sisse, Rog Thras, and myself on Korvold. All I remember was, Rog Thras's turn 1 was just so disgusting. And
That's what we do. That's what we do.
Yeah. I like 1 and 2 is just so disgusting. It was beautiful. They played it super well. Rebel did, and it was just like just generating tons of mana. Utilized the new card, Archdruid's Charm, to
Yep.
tutor up some Devoted Druid action, which was like, okay, yeah, we're dead. Like we're just dead. And very fortunate because 3 cards were played that turn. One being a Veil of Summer. The Thrasios player had exactly
Mindbreak Trap. Yeah.
Yep. Yep. And I still believe that's 100% the correct play because that is the only card you lose to. But instead, it's a plethora of counter spells,
Mm.
So it comes to me, I push for like a turn 3 ad nauseum. And I cast a Culling the Weak. And then like everyone's kind of like the Thrasios player and says like, oh, they're kind of debating on what I'm doing. And I go, I'm going to cast ad nauseum. Like I'm not trying to hide anything. I'm not trying to be cheeky. He's like, yeah, I'm going to just try to cast. Nah. So I got silenced. I didn't have anything else to do. I could have played Korvold that turn, but I didn't want to actually eat any of my resources because I had 2 rituals in my hand with the ad nauseum. So it comes back around. Nothing happens. Ad nauseum. And then get to a point, and there's a heuristic study in play, mind you. Don't pay for the study up to a certain point where I have the net mana. So at that point, it didn't matter. So I'm like looping grinding station, doing grinding station stuff along with Lion's Eye Diamond. So the Lion's Eye Diamond was perfect because it's making me 3 mana. I'm using 1 to pay for the study and then using the rest to cast Dockside Extortionist. So, and Dockside was making, I think it was like 7 or 9. It was pretty crazy. But I had at that point like blast veils, those type of things to protect myself. And again, like I had to explain to not Rebel, but the other 2 players how I actually win. And I was like, well, I have Ruthless Technomancer combo. It's basically Corpse Dance Loop, but with a creature that gets under heuristic, I can also Bowmaster everybody to death with Wheel of Fortune. I explain my combo. Everyone's good for that. And then we go to round 5. I'm in seat 4. Zane's in seat 1. Zane's undefeated, being, the chosen one, Gojo himself. Then we got Wounded, and we have Max P and myself. Only thing I know is Zane and I both mulled a 3. Oh my gosh. This game was like, it had to be one of my favorite games, even though it resulted in a loss, just because how the texture of the game continues. And this is something I want to talk to you about for you Sans Blue Turbo players out there. The reason why you're not winning on Korvold, and I'm only telling you this, is just because now I've been able to get like almost a full year's worth of reps on the deck in tournament play and testing out different like tweaks and stuff. Just win doesn't mean just do it. You have to still look at the repercussions of doing it. But applying a win is what you obviously want to do. But still picking your spots is so important, especially being Sans Blue and getting blown out by things like Silence or Flusterstorms, those type of things that affect all decks, right? But specifically us, we don't have a lot of tools. So our tools are very valuable. Don't listen to anybody. Play Crop Rotation Emergent Zone in your Korvold deck. Like I don't care how many articles there are out about it and saying it's bad and stuff. It doesn't matter comparatively to where it's at with Born Upon the Wind. It's your tool that you have. Worst case scenario, I can use it to go get a fetch land. I can go get an Ancient Tomb, City of Traders. I went and got Nurturing Peatland, which was Ancestral Recall, draw 3, crack the top deck tutor. Like Nurturing Peatland came up in all my games. Because it minimum in Korvold, draw 2. If Korvold's on the battlefield, obviously it's just draw 1. And it's an untapped dual land. And again, it's not to poo-poo on the whole like crop rot's bad and stuff, because I do think people play E-Zone in like a lot of decks, and I guess the kids would say is cope, right? Is that the term they use? For this deck specifically, and this isn't for all Jund Turbo decks, by the way, or any Sans Blue. This is just for this one specifically. Korvold just oddly works on this axis so that it plays really well at instant speed. It just does. When you can go over the top of like a Mindbreak Trap or a Silence, which by the way happens, and it happened, it really gives you that access. Obviously, Final Fortune, super powerful. I'd play 2 copies of Final Fortune if I could. I don't want to play the sorcery ones. I only want to play instant speed, go over the tops. We're not Mardu. The extra turn effects don't really work in our decks. Zay molds to 3. I apologize. I forgot what the other gentleman molded to. It's in my notes, but Zane kept. And the only reason I know this is because we literally kept the exact same hand. Ancient Tomb, like Talisman of Signet of some sort, and Wheel, a blue wheel, Time Twister. Well, he's on Rockside. He top stacks a Mana Crypt, so he's going for a turn 1 wheel. Like, and I look at my hand, which is Ancient Tomb, Talisman, Wheel. And I go, hell yeah, let's go. And it gets countered, and we're like, ah. Kennen develops, Italian does some stuff. I would say most Korvold players, because there's not like inherently a ton of like experienced high level people in this nature, and that's just the truth of the deck. I'm always honest about it. They would just basically like, that's it, I can't win. I just freeze up. And I'm like, if I'm going to lose, that's fine. But I'm going to play patiently and see what I can do and just take my time. And if I just get got, it happens. I'm playing Jund. Just develop my board, Ancient Tomb into a Talisman, pass it up, and then ultimate comes back to me, and I cast a Wheel. Wheel of Fortune resolves, and then there was some talk about like whether I should wheel or not because I'm giving like Kennen all these cards, and Kennen's already kind of developed. And I go, I don't care. I have one other card in my hand. It's a Necromancy, which does literally nothing. I need to get cards in my hand. I don't care if all the 3 blue players have 7 cards each, because guess what? They're going to be fighting amongst each other. And again, if they win, they win. I'm in no position to kind of like politic that way. My only chance is to get back into the game.
Yeah, you can't just sit around hoping your top deck will just be perfect.
Right. And it's not going to happen. So the game goes for quite a long time. Kennen's doing some stuff. Max P's like they're kind of battling back and forth a little bit and going over some stuff. And I'm just like literally like play a land, play a dork, play this, go, and just, watching how things unfold. Before you know, we get to a point where I have like 2 dorks, 3 or 4 lands, a rock, a stupid orcish lumberjack, which I never saw a forest off of, by the way, and Korvold's on the battlefield. And at the time, Korvold's not the threat. It just isn't. Like the way the game is. Kennen's doing their thing. There's a Nezahal over here as well that got stolen with the Gilded Drake, and then there's Rograkh stuff, So it just wasn't inherently the threat. And then Wounded put out a Wandering Archaic, and that card was, that card's pretty brutal. Even though there's a ton of mana, it's just not like you don't want to have to eat up your resources to like try to like play the game. And then an Oppo came down, and so that kind of like limited like what was going on. So ultimately, like I think Zane told me there was like 15 or 17 like total artifacts and enchantments on the battlefield. Like I led with a Calling the Weak, and I didn't care. I like play like Rite of Flame and Calling the Weak. I let Wounded have black and red mana. It doesn't matter to me. Calling the Weak got countered, which was very smart to stop it, to negate a lot of my resources. So big kudos to Max P on that to stop that, because that was actually a game-saving play. It really was. And then we got to a point where I still had exactly enough mana because I'm holding a land back, and I was holding Beseiju the whole time. So if there was some Basalt action coming on, I was very disciplined with holding to Beseiju. Unfortunately, it was the only land I could play because I had a fetch land, and there's an opposition agent on the battlefield. Tainted Pact for a Dockside. Like I go over, I think like a Nas and a Breach. So they're gone. But my Praetor's Grasp and like Technomancer and that stuff still in my deck. I get to the Dockside. The last card in my hand is Deflecting Swat. Like the last thing I can use. But there's a Wandering Archaic. So I'm like looking at, I'm like, we're this far in, nothing's gotten stopped. Of course, Zane has a Pact of Negation for my Dockside, and he having tons of mana. Very disciplined. Again, like I said, Zane was out of this game in the beginning, but he picked his spots. Play patiently. You know what I mean? Like that's just kind of what happened. We talked about this. Zane and I talked about this. I'm still very confused. I need a judge on this one. I had a Deflecting Swat. I honestly don't know what happens.
With Wandering Archaic specifically is what
with Wandering Archaic specifically, because I'm a dum-dum and I've literally been over this a million times, but like I just literally forgot. Like I don't know what happens with the target change and upon resolution. I would just like somebody much smarter than me to tell me what happens. So basically, Dockside Extortion is on the stack. There is a Pact of Negation. Wandering Archaic's chilling over here. I don't fire off the Deflecting Swat because in my brain, and I was very fried at this point, I was like, oh, he'll just copy and change the targets and I just get blown out anyway, so it doesn't really matter. And at least like worst case scenario, like if I just get blown out, that's fine. And I'll just hold the Deflecting Swat because I have a Korvold. I've literally gotten 2 different rulings over the weekend about it, so I just need somebody way smarter than me. But regardless, Zane untapped, cast his own Tainted Pact, paid for the Wandering Archaic, took the last card out of his library, and then cast Thassa's Oracle, which was in his hand. So kudos to Zane, monster. It was a really, really tough kind of like odd battle because that is not a position that typically Korvold likes to be in.
Yeah.
But I enjoyed it because, again, it allowed me to kind of flex that patience. Not really trying to make myself feel like the threat, but my whole goal was to literally, like, if I see a Dockside at any point in time in that game is over. One thing about this term is pretty interesting. I didn't really see like a high redundancy of tutors to get Dockside or like entombs and stuff like that, which was really interesting. I just didn't see that side of the deck. So, and, it happened in a couple of turns here and there, but after I like drew some cards and whatnot, but 3-2 day 1, feeling pretty good, 15 points. I think I'm like 5th seed at this point. I'm the highest like 15 pointer. So we go into day 2. So round 6, can't draw. I didn't have the ability to draw because all my opponents were kind of paired down or paired up to me. So we had to play. There were some unfortunate mulligans in those games for those players, and I kept a first 7, which led with like a gemstone caverns, fetch land, put a tap land to play, cast Ragavan. That's all I did. So nothing like ultra scary, right? It wasn't like the gemstone vampiric action,
Yeah.
right? What we're playing against is Akiri Thrasios, Sharky on Tevish Crom, and then Andy Beach, I believe, on Atraxa. So 2 green decks, right? But I knew like this player kept up, I think, a 6. And then poor Andy kept like a 3 or a 4. But by the way, developed beautifully out of it. Very impressive stuff from him from Atraxa. I just played a turn 2 Mayhem Devil and just kind of started controlling the board. And it looked interesting because like I didn't kill the Esper Sentinels. I left the Esper Sentinels in play. Because by the time we got to that point, I could pay for virtually anything off Esper Sentinel, and killing them, and nobody's casting anything. So it wasn't really like they were threatening. I wanted the artifact count on the battlefield. So I started picking off Atraxa's dorks. And I picked off like a dork over here as well. And I ultimately picked off a Thrasios and those type of things. And it also cleared the board to allow my Ragavan to attack in. So I knew what I was doing. And then I also killed a Ranger Captain. And again, it was like, why would you kill Ranger Captain? And I'm just like, because Ranger Captain blows me out.
Yeah, like how does the silence effects are so busted against.
It's a 3/3. It's a silence effect. And I'm eating your dorks because you are literally a mana source away from an Atraxa. J-Lo off the top, we're in business, right? We're cooking. Yeah. And it's an uncounterable Atraxa, or no, it wouldn't be an uncounterable Atraxa, but it basically is uncounterable, right? No, it would have been because it would have been off of Delighted Halfling. Yes. That was the situation that like I was in. I knew what I was doing because my hand was Tainted Pack, Final Fortune, Defense Grid, Blast, Veil. Nobody is pressuring me. I just didn't like fire off the Final Fortune response to a silence that I got silenced on my turn. I was like, okay, cool. I've got big Korvold, draw some cards, Mayhem Devil, Ragavan's just keeping me in the game. When you have a Ragavan that is untethered, you don't think it's a big deal, but just that treasure in that deck is worth like 2 cards all the time. Yeah. It feels so good. And then Sharky goes their turn, and then they go to cast a Vampiric Tutor. They tap out for Vampiric Tutor. So I response, I Final Fortune. So my Final Fortune resolves. I cast Tainted Pack. I just wanted anyway to either get Dockside, whatever, don't care. Just whatever card comes first. I'm not trying to be greedy here. I just need a card because I have so many resources I can sack and just get me where I need to be. And I took a Noxious Revival. The only thing left that's really important for me to kill is the Delighted Halfling. Not because of it casting anything uncounterable, because we're on my Final Fortune turn, right? It's because it produces 1 mana and there's 3 mana available over there. Main phase 1, I just lead off a Defense Grid. D-Grid resolves. Okay. I know there's still a chance to get interacted with here. So I go to combat. So I purposely am combat because I'm going to basically force the Delighted Halfling to activate in combat. So if the mana isn't used, it's going away. So it's going to be pretty hard to have at this particular point based on the resources and like to be able to have like exactly like Force of Will plus blue card with the 3 mana. So I really liked my shot, and I had a little trick up my sleeve on this one. Into combat, so it's still in my attack step. I actually shot the Delighted Halfling with the Mayhem Devil, sacking some treasures to make mana because I had 1 sack off the Korvold attack, which triggered the Mayhem Devil, and so on and so forth there. So then I cast Noxious Revival as a bait spell targeting the Dockside Distortions, paying 2 life, and I sacked the mana for green. So it looked like I had a little something. So for like Autumn's Veil or Veil of Summer. And then I figured something probably like Boseiju Otawara was coming down. It was Otawara. So Otawara targeting the Defense Grid. We're still in my combat. So in response, while the Defense Grid's still in play and everybody's tapped out, ad nauseum. So I set it up to where I could cleanly cast ad nauseum. Because at this point, I don't care. No one's attacked me at all. I'm at 37 life. And I was just like, that was my whole point, was to bait a spell out for them to utilize their resources. Because I want ad nauseum. If you kill or whatever the Defense Grid, that's fine. Like you're not going to have anything else after this anyways. You're tapped out. So yeah. And I had like a Veil anyways in my hands. And then my ad nauseum was like both Spirit Guides. I mean, it just gave me whatever I needed. Like I literally, it just gave me everything. Because 34 life, my mana card was pretty low. I built it that way for that reason. There was 2 key things I had here was obviously the blast, tons of free mana, and I revealed a emergent zone. I have not played my land for the turn, so I go, yep, Otawara bounces it, cool. Second main phase, play emergent zone. So obviously that doesn't prompt anything, so I recast Defense Grid. So at this point, I have so much mana and free instant rituals and everything that if somehow there's a mind break trap, I can either win over the top or I'm going to be able to stop it with Monkey Blast. So that's what I had. I just went and Monkey Blasted, but I basically insulated myself twice over. So again, I made sure I was able to act when I wanted to, and then Underworld Breach ensued. And I forgot in this game because I tutored up a talisman, Wish Call Talisman, to make the Dockside count 4. But it was actually already 4 because my dumb brain, I literally said it the turn before I go, because the Phyrexia Metamorph was in Japanese. I was like, it's an artifact in addition to one. And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, so, okay. And I just totally like spaced. And nobody corrected me, by the way. So you three that were in my pod, Judge, we get to a point to where Breach, tutors, all that stuff. I go get Ruthless Technomancer to make it very streamlined because I have a Mayhem Devil in play. I have, at this point, 4 artifacts. It technically was 5. It was 5, but it was 4. The exact number I need to kill everybody with Mayhem Devil. They were gentlemen. They appreciate it. I honestly legitimately feel bad for their mulliganing situations, but I do want to commend Andy for playing like really tight to the very end with very low resources. I was super impressed. Round 7, ID. Then we go into top 16. It is a feature match with myself and seat 1 because I'm in second seed. It was a super sweet pod and everybody was really nice. So it was myself, then like Rocket Man, Memo, who, by the way, effing rules. So happy to meet Memo. That was actually one of the most highlights of my weekend. Outside of conversing with Memo, like through a computer, just being able to actually meet and engage with another human being was fantastic. Absolute delight.
He's such a cool dude. I really wish I got to go there for his first event over here.
Also, big congratulations coming over here in the pool of sharks that he plays against pretty regularly and just top 16ing like it was just, another day in the park. And then Jason. So 2 Nagilas, I believe a turbo variant of Nagila. Memo's kind of mid-range Chatterfang boy. And then kind of like a little bit like more dedicated to black TNK Necropotence, which I like more anyways. Yeah, so I mulligan to 5. Again, being very disciplined with my mulligans, not panicking. I have cards to get me out of this. Nas, Necro, Double Wheel, those type of things. Obviously, Korvold can do that as well.
You were on the Misfortune this event, right?
I was. Yeah. Man, wheels are feeling good.
Like, they are. I've really been liking them.
When you build your deck streamline and there's not a lot of like dual caster mages and twin flames and saw in halves and all these other moving pieces that are all like high roller, super blow up potential cards.
Yeah. And they don't all go together. You have like half of this combo with half of this combo, and they're both dead cards in like 90% of cases.
And I don't know how many times I've talked about like how much I hate dual caster mage. Yeah. The card is absolute donkey butt. But what happened was I just imp sealed for a turn 1 dockside.
Or imp sealed for dockside turn 1, right?
Yeah. A turn 1 dockside.
I was gonna say turn 1 dockside is usually not good, but it happens. Not on the play, but
for that, And that's just what I did. And then it kind of came back around again. I just like played like it was like Badlands into a City Traders. Tap City Traders, cast Arcane Signet. I specifically remember because everybody's like, which one's that one? And I'm like, that's a Japanese Arcane Signet. Rocket Man does a turn 2 Necropotence off of Cabal Ritual. Yeah, so I think Necro for like 10 or so. And it's like a good, responsible play, no pressure on life totals. So everyone's kind of developed and done their thing. It comes back to me ultimately. There's 6 artifacts and enchantments on the battlefield. What do you think's going to happen?
Well, based on all your events, your rounds previous, I wouldn't be surprised if you led with a defense grid. Because it sounds like you did that almost every round.
I had the defense grid, by the way. So
doesn't surprise me.
So Dockside into Korvold. At this point, I'm seeing some cards, right? Like I've got tons of mana on the battlefield.
This is turn 3, so you don't have to use as many of like the treasures to power out Korvold.
Right. And I haven't played my land for the turn yet either. And that's very key because the land I play is a Nurturing Peat land. So this Nurturing Peat land triggers the City of Traders, which draws me a card because it sacrifices. Then I crack the Nurturing Peat land to draw 2 more cards. So it was just so good. It was just like this flowing
Lancestral Recall, I would call it.
That's I don't know about that one, man. That's a Lancestral Recall, man. I like that. We ultimately, I look at my hand and I go, okay, Dockside's making 6. I have an Animate Dead. And we're at this point where Korvold's resolved. Nobody stopped my Imperial Seal. Because I would assume maybe Rocketman had some kind of interaction. But Jason had a Rhystic Study. And I'm just like disrespecting the Rhystic Study completely. Because again, kind of light on resources. So I was just like, okay, they can't have it all. You don't get resources, counter spells, and the draw engines. You got to have one's got to be missing. I looked at it and I go, if I don't win this turn, I'm not going to probably get another turn because at this point, there's probably going to be some level of Necro, whether it's Necro with Born, Necro with Final Fortune, or they just have it already.
Yeah,
And
especially like the number of like top deck tutors they have available to them, the amount of ways they could just like guarantee, hey, I get to do the thing.
Right, and they sculpted a 7, so I'm not going to not develop and pass. That's just a losing strategy again. Just like the game where I had to manual storm through. This time's a little bit different because I have a Animate Dead in my hand and I have a few treasures left. So I just go Defense Grid. And at this point, Defense Grid resolves, Animate Dead the Dockside, made a bunch of mana, kept playing a bunch of things, like did some Rain of Filth action, Grim Monolith, just keep getting to the point to where I just develop mana. I have no good cards in my hand, and I leave all my treasures, cast Wheel of Fortune. Again, wheel showing up, gassing myself up, protected by like a Defense Grid or a Docent like level card, and then get into Ruthless Technomancer. And I showed them a tutor, and they're like, okay, yeah, you got it, but just do it for the camera. So I, again, just went through the Ruthless Technomancer loop with Mayhem Devil and Dockside Extortionist. So
let's go.
That's how it was. That was turn 3. Felt pretty good. So awesome opponents. They were really cool because we were vibing. We were like all the blue, like other the Sisei players and the Kennen players. They were all like, and Team K, they're just all talking. Like they're just yapping and stuff. But then you had the Battle of the Rograkh between like Zane and Tad over there. You know, them just being like crazy men. It was really cool. I was really appreciative of my opponents. I know I'm like kind of joking a lot, but I appreciate how like, yes, it was like Korvold did the Korvold thing, but there was a lot more to it than just like, oh, I just blindly just did it and just fed a Rhystic Study. And again, I have to trust the deck the way it's built, that it's going to have a certain percentage to hit these cards to do it. Because if it doesn't, I wasn't getting there probably anyways. We finish up. It's Tad is victorious. And then there's 2 Sisei players. And then I'm in seat 1. Tad is in seat 2. So Korvold, Rograkh, Sisei. Again, you have to, mulligan pretty aggressively. Just trying to find like none of my hands had like lands. It was just the weirdest thing. So I'm just trying to find like a comparable hand, because here's my thought process going into this. I don't care what Sisei does. They're going to do something that I'm not really they're probably not going to feed too much into a Dockside strategy. So I have to have probably some kind of pivot, whether it's Dockside, Ad Nauseam, Necro, something to get me there. And I kept like a 2-land, Grim Monolith, Carpet of Flowers, and like 2 tutors. That's what I kept. One being Gamble, the other being Vampiric Tutor. So I'm like, that's a reasonable hand. I don't like leading with Carpet of Flowers, but I didn't want to lead off with the tutor. I don't know what I'm getting. That's what I did. I led off with the Carpet of Flowers. Obviously, correctly, people fetched around it. Tad kept a 5 and gambled, discarded a City of Brass, pass turn. Sisei developed pretty well. Oh, and this is the most important part. The 4th player, Sisei, had a Gemstone Caverns turn 1. Yeah, their turn 1, they played Blind Obedience. Okay, so this is actually kind of crucial. Or do you play it on 2?
I didn't get to see the game, so I don't know if you had played it on 2. 1 or 2.
I have to double check the footage. I think it was turn 2.
Because if it was a 5, then he would have had to go like pedal.
Happen is like they just, because my plan was a turn 3 Ad Nauseam, was to play Grim Monolith on 2, Vampiric Tutor for a Naz, and then try to cast Ad Nauseam. That did not work. that my Grim Monolith is just dead now. So I attempt to I can't remember if it's this turn or next turn. I attempt to gamble at some point, one of those, and it gets stuffed by a mental misstep after the Remora is already on the battlefield. That's what's important. The Remora is on the battlefield and didn't get countered. So that Sisei player said they just drew it for their turn when it passed to me. I was curious, like my thought process was like, well, what are you worried about me gambling for? And it was like Dockside Extortion. So I go, you have a Blind Obedience. And there's only like 2 or 3, there's only 3 total artifacts on the battlefield. And my artifacts come to play tap. I'm not going to play a Dockside, make 3 treasures, and pass to red deck. That doesn't make any sense. Like, that's not a game-winning play. And I'm just like, I'm literally just trying to I was like, I just need a tutor for probably like a Mana Crypt at this point. Gamble for like a Mana Crypt, just so even though it's going to come to play tap, at least I have some extra resources, because my Carpet wasn't online. My Carpet ultimately did get online and had 2 blue. It effectively gets back around to where like I don't know. I don't know. That's the same player never really they Eldamari's called for a dockside and they didn't really develop their board. They just basically kept like 2 lands,
Line
and
obedience, and then
yeah.
yeah.
I don't know what was going on because it was like I think a snap keep 7.
Oh, really?
That's what the most shocking part is for myself. Because that's not to me a game winning strategy in that position. Because Rogsai can first off, Sisse completely operates without like they're dorks. Like they
Yeah.
can operate
I mean,
without
you can like
artifact
slow
mana.
down their dockside stuff, but
And then Rogsai can just Thassa's Oracle combo through anything with 3 mana. They don't need. I mean, yes, does the blind obedience hurt him? Sure, but it just was kind of a weird lineup. And I understand playing it like you're not gonna play it, right?
yeah.
But just to keep based on the strength of that, because he said he kept on the strength of like that and Eldamari's call, and I'm just like, I'm obviously not very well equipped. Like I know the Clam Chowder build really well. I don't know the Planeswalker build very well.
There's a lot of creatures. I mean, there's stuff to get, but when I read somebody's accounting of this game, my immediate thought was in this board state, there's a Rockstar going second who has a fish in play. That's like kind of what their deck does, basically. They want Ristic and Mystic is like the usual thing they're trying to do. And then just get like, they just need like 3 or 4 cards and then they win. And then also there's 2 Sisses who you mentioned before, were basically just like, we can't win this pod. There's 2 turbo decks ahead of them that are very fast, can win out of nowhere, have lots of ways to shut off normal interaction. And the Sisse decks, something I've mentioned, they're pretty greedy in their construction for the most part, in terms of like, they're almost built more like a Magda or maybe not a Tyon, but kind of like where they don't operate on the I'm winning with my spells on the stack for their win attempts. So they have way fewer like actual counter spells now. Like you'll have them cutting like Force of Negation, or some of them don't run Force of Will, and they're just on like MBT, Fierce Swat, maybe a Swan Song, Fluster, like 5-ish counter spells. Maybe they run a Veil or something. That's like that approach of just like, well, I have to get to my Sisse combo in Rockside Korvold pod is really rough. So you have to like not die. So to me, the only thing in Sisse's position I would ever mental misstep is a spell that wins the game, Demonic Consultation, something like that. Or if they had it before when the Rockside cast the Mystic Remora, I probably would have misstepped a Rockside Remora, because the odds that Rockside Remora is their only payoff and their only way to get out of the Mold of 5 to win is pretty high to me. And then especially casting a misstep into Remora on a gamble that there's no spell that I can think of at least that would just win the game in that board state for Korvold.
Yeah, and
I don't like to play really.
In play.
Yeah.
With the blind obedience in play, like I'm like, okay, well, I'll try to be responsible here. I'm gonna try to get rid of the Remora and get rid of some of the auxiliary pieces on the battlefield and the dockside, so there's no chance for an Emil combo, because that's a strong possibility at this point because there's the dockside on his side of the battlefield. So I knowingly didn't draw a land the turn before, so I'm a land shy to go for what I really want to do. So I wasn't quite comfortable with it. So I've Empiric tutored, obviously feeding the Remora one more. It resolved. I went and put Culling Ritual on the stack because my plan was I have a monkey in my hand. I was going to make 2 mana off carpet. So it was like 2, 3, 4, 5. I would have I would have 4 mana to cast the Culling. I'd make 6. And then I was going to play like a Grim Monolith, tap it for 3 colorless, use a red, play Korvold. Now the board's pretty clear. I had the biggest threat on the battlefield, and I drew a card, and I didn't have to eat any of my lands. So I was like, okay, this feels pretty decent. I had 3 mana left over, and I drew it ad nauseum off my trigger, and then I passed, and then we just died. Like Tad just literally drew Thassa's Oracle, Demonic Consultation, off the Remora draws. His opening hand was triple land, gamble, and Praetor's Grasp on a 5, and we just lost that. And again, super happy for Tad, but kind of salty a little bit.
And that was exactly the 1 mana game winning kind of card that I was talking about that you want to save a mental misstep for.
Like, it's Magic and it happens, but like literally my top 16s and the 2 gold events that I top 16 in and this tournament, they all end in just getting like Thassa's comboed, and nobody keeps, like, the blue players don't keep anything to be responsible. They just don't. Everyone's so hyper fixated on what I'm doing because obviously, like, I'm the big scary first seat Korvold deck. When you have a blind obedience in play, you have a lot of breathing room with me. I openly say like I'm not, I tell people I'm not on dual caster or twin flame. Like, you can look at my deck list. It's public, like in between rounds if you want to. So I would have to like get to a grinding station loop. And that was my plan going into the next turn was I was going to like try to tutor up a breach and try to get through grinding station because that would have gotten through the blind obedience if I didn't make that play. The only thing I can think of, if I would have been able to make 7 mana, if I had 7 mana, I would have just went and got peered into the abyss off the vamp tutor and just said, just go for it. But I couldn't because I felt more confident in peer than I would in Ad Nauseam because it wasn't just like I cleared the entire board. There's a Sisay, a Kutzel, a Feobur Elder, and a Sisay.
Good bit of pressure on life totals there.
Right. So it forces me to win that turn, like specifically that turn, because to me, the chances of Tad drawing exactly those 2 cards with 3 mana is very slim. Very slim. I played a different out. I should have, I guess, tutored for the Ad Nauseam and just Ad Naused into the Mystic Remora. And then just prayed that I had Rite of Flame Final Fortune. Like
it's pretty tricky to do that. That's tough.
Yeah, that was pretty tough beats. But ultimately, really congratulations. Again, Tad stayed patient, bided his time, didn't waste anything he didn't need to. And I asked him, I was like, did you have a counterspell in your hand at the end of the game? He goes, oh, no. He goes, I was totally scared of you the whole time. I'm like, God. That's an interesting decision point and something I can learn from is, do I just go for the Ad Nauseam and then just like feed the living Jesus out of the fish?
Was he tapped out?
I can't quite remember. I'll be honest with you.
I think if he even has like 1 blue up, that becomes a no-go for me. I'm like, yeah, I don't want to do it. If he's tapped out, maybe, because then you're playing around like potentially days, MBT, the 2 forces, years as things he hits. But if you get to not, your Nas is going to resolve. So like your ability to just like deploy mana and then probably find a grid or a veil effect or something like that. Like,
so I couldn't deploy mana rocks. I mean, I could, but
there's a blind obedience.
Because the blind obedience. So that was the catch 22. If there wasn't a blind obedience in play, I would have absolutely just tutored for the Nas, like 1000%. So I had to think about, well, how do I remove the blind obedience? Well, it's abrupt decay, assassin's trophy, and culling ritual. So I only have
Beseiju.
Oh, yes, and Beseiju. I didn't really, it's a lot of pressure on to have exactly that. And also, too, I got to get a green source. I got to make sure it's an untapped green source. It can't be any mana rocks. Like, and Ad Nauseam, it's going to go for it. And that's probably what, in quote, hindsight, I should have done and just been like greedy as all get out. And I tried to make the play that would still put me ahead, but also kind of like clean up the table.
Yeah.
And it definitely wasn't, I don't know if it was the right play or not because we don't know what that Ad Nauseam was. But regardless, that was it. I rambled on too much about that particular match. There was a lot to unpack there. I'm still trying to figure out what I can do to learn to get better from that. And going back from the games I played earlier, I thought I might have been a little bit more crisper in my decisions on that one. I kind of like had that second guess where I was like, I put myself in the role of like, I need to be the good guy here and kind of like clean up some stuff. And regardless, I should have probably just hit send, and went for it. And then just got like blown out by like a dispel or something, but I don't care.
It's tricky. Yeah, that's tough. That's a hard one, especially. Now, one thing I want to point out about this, because the card that you did go for was a contentious one in your list because you talked about not wanting to run Culling Ritual. Like we had an episode where we talked about it a lot.
Yeah.
I'm assuming because you wanted to run Pier and those cards go together very well, like that layered and kind of was a tiebreaker. Do you think I know you said you're not going to run Pier. Do you want to still run Culling Ritual?
Yeah, because the way I've been playing the deck is outside of the games that, like I said, like semifinals match where I had just where I tutored for the dock side, I didn't have any early dock sides. It just didn't flow that way, or that's not what the game state needed. Again, it was pretty much all about like Nas, Tainted Pack, Underworld Breach, and I would and Culling Ritual gets me there. And then if I don't need the Culling Ritual, that's also okay too. In the way the deck's constructed to be more of a mana-focused first list, and then kind of the dock side, which is obviously a super valuable piece to shocker any deck.
Yeah,
that plays it. Like, I don't care. I know people are like, oh, but that's like Korvold's thing. Well, fun fact, barely casted Korvold this weekend and barely casted Dockside when it, like, at any point in early time in the games. So
as like a ritual, basically.
Yeah.
Like, it sounded like it was like your outlet for a lot of the game.
Yeah. Because like Ruthless Technomancer on like a big Korvold was plenty enough. But like, again, it was mostly just always about Underworld Breach. And Underworld Breach, and that's what was really important to me is that Breach, LED, and Grinding Station would have got through the blind obedience. So that probably should have just been my line, but no, Clay Ritual's gonna stay. We're gonna tweak just a few cards that just don't matter. Like we're gonna take the Fiery Covenant out because for whatever reason, I again tried to be responsible this weekend. Never cast it once, never saw it outside of flipping off of a Nas, and it just didn't do anything, or going through it past the Tainted Pack.
Mhm.
So pretty irrelevant there. So that's coming out. Orcish Lumberjack, the Peer into the Abyss. I don't think the deck needs Corpse Dance because Corpse Dance feeds into the worst type of cards in the format.
Yeah.
And honestly, it was just to have a density of reanimation spells. I only cast like 2 or 3 the whole weekend.
Yeah.
So that was pretty interesting. And I was on a lot. I'm on like Unearth, Reanimate, Necromancy, Animate Dead, Shallow Grave, Corpse Dance, and then I guess Noxious Revival and Technomancer, but those don't kind of, those are modular. I don't think I really need those. I'm just going to wrap it up and kind of just move into this one. I do want to say I was super appreciative from the in-person support. I heard a lot of you, a little online thugs were, Korvold sucks. And does he have by the way, every round I got, do you have the dockside in your lap? And by the way, if you are going to troll me, get the lore right. The dockside wasn't in the lap. It was the saw in half, right? It was saw in half. If you're going to do it, get it right. And so my response to everybody is like, oh, no. I just run Living Wish to go get my dockside.
I need to put something at the beginning of this video to be like, please don't. But if I say don't comment about the lap side extortionist, that's every freaking comment's going to be.
Yeah, like... and it's funny because and the people who did, they were like, well, I gotta ask, it was all in jest because obviously that was a completely different person and everything like that. I really enjoy the CCS events. I think this was the highest level quality total competition I've played in, but from Cookout, from when I started Cookout till now, like this particular tournament took the cake. I mean, you just got killers everywhere. I appreciate the support from literally everybody. I had like 100 in total 50 messages on my phone between like text, Discord, Twitter. Like I've had missed phone calls. It was funny. And mostly just because a lot of these people who messaged me, they've been supporting me and me working on this deck for a long time and going through this like long process. Again, this doesn't have a huge network of people. I don't like really do as much brewing as much with the deck anymore because I think it's pretty close to being solved. But again, I'm not looking for incremental values. I'm not looking for the Grim Hirelings, the professional face breakers of the world. I'm not looking for all these random auxiliary pieces that just kind of like, they're just everywhere. Like, yes, saw in half on dockside is sweet. Guess what? It gets blown out by everything. Because I'm going to tell you, if you protect it with Dose and Veil, all that stuff, then I'm probably going for it in a different way anyways. And I would rather, if I do fail, my dockside to be in my graveyard than on the battlefield.
Yeah.
Because of the sheer amount of clone effects out there. Yeah. Ultimately, more so enjoyed playing against all these competitors. Tried to go into most of my matches pretty quiet, patient, kind of like a learning thing for me. And I treated it that way because I just think that that's where Korvold's kind of wrong. Everybody's like full send, like turn 2. And that's just not the way the deck works optimally. It's not Equadargo where that deck can just do that. The deck can literally, I told like Connor and I were talking about it. A deck can just go like turn 1 Xanad Storm pass. And I'm like, oh, dude, we're probably dead. like Connor's got a full grip. And he's just about to like hit the only player who could stop it. And then he's just about to like play a turn 2 Peer into the Abyss.
Yep.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack about the deck. I won't go into super all of it here. I'll save that for another time. Yeah, don't be afraid to play Sans Blue. And ultimately, don't be afraid to play Turbo.
Yes, it's doing well right now. It's popping off.
I think Turbo's definition isn't about turn 1, turn 2. Now, granted, if you've got the protected win, like, it happens. You've mentioned it. It happened to you. I think Tad killed us on like turn 3 or turn 4, just like that. That's part of the game. That's the magic we signed up for. It is cEDH. If you really want to play Turbo, you got to understand the pivot points. We've talked about this a million times. There's pressure points in the game, and understanding what your deck can do, what it can't do, and how it lines up against the field. And don't panic if you're behind. Just take your time. If you build your Turbo deck with like defense grids, some protection pieces, whether it's got Grand Abolisher effects, or like for me, it's like Docent, Defense Grid, Veils, that type of stuff, or crop rotation, or Born Upon a Win. So those type of things. Being able to pick your spot really gives you the best chance of winning and know when to push. There's a difference of like just going for it, but knowing when to go for it. And that's kind of hard to explain for some people. I'm not very eloquent about that. I would leave that to better experts than myself, but that's my biggest takeaway. Applying patience this weekend really served me well. And I'd say in the finals match, I could have cranked up my patience down a little bit and kind of maybe went for it. And that's a good learning point for me. There's no shame in coming in second in a 180 plus tournament against some of the best players on the planet. And I can say that because Memo was there. Again, I can't say enough about the support, from just like the deck support to support of me as a person, and then support of this channel. A lot of people, they all know who Lemora is. They don't know who Matthew is. They'll be like, "Oh, I know you from your podcast." I'm like, yeah, me and Matthew. And they're like, I'm like, Lemora. And they're like, "Yeah, dude, I know him," Absolutely.
You know what drove me crazy with that was that for some reason, the pairings at the tournament I played yesterday didn't use my name. It used my Discord name. So every single match thing was Lemora's cards, number, whatever. And
that's the guy.
There he is.
And also, actually, this is something I want to say. Very impressed with the level of play, because nobody freaked out when Korvold was on the battlefield. Like, if Korvold was just there to be a value piece. And obviously, we know what it can do if it gets a dockside roll in.
Yeah.
What happens if you dockside and Rocco? Like, you know what I mean? Like, the game's over, right?
Or Sisse.
Sisse, those type of things. So, or a Magda,
Yeah.
But people evaluated the situation. I didn't feel like I got hyper hated out of a game because of just existing. Like, people literally looked at the situation, looked what was going on, even asked, "Hey, do you have anything to interact here?" And one of the matches I did, I was able to fight through like 2 blue things. I would honestly, if I could suggest anything, is just, if you do like Turbo, play it and practice with it and play it, and don't be disgruntled. If, like, I was in a triple blue pod every match but one, and it was still a double blue pod in Tie-Am, not a favorable matchup, right? I had a pretty, I'd say, okay record at the end of the day. And that's another thing too. I just didn't squeak into top 16. I was second seed going into top 16. Like, I had 4 wins, 2 losses, and a draw, and probably could have won at least, probably could have figured out a way to win the one I lost to Zane. You know what I'm saying? Like, maybe if I backtracked and looked at something, it's possible. And I did it in Sans Blue. If you don't remember, there was another gentleman who did it at Punt City with John, and that was Connor. He's in the top 4 situation too. So I'm just saying, like, just give it some patience if that's what you really want to do. That's because everyone's like, "Oh my God, you're not running Dualcaster Twin Flame. Like, how do you win?" And I'm just like, look at the deck.
Tell you how I don't win ever is Dualcaster Twin Flame.
Yeah, that's fair.
That's how I don't win.
Anything you want to say, Matt, about the deck, or because I know I was super scatterbrained. If you need me to re-record that, I can.
No. I think we pretty well got through it. And also, I'm gonna be doing a top 16 breakdown for Punt City 3, where we can I'll go through more card by card and talk about, like, again, Eric mentioned kind of some of the slots that are newer that were coming in, like some of those reanimation pieces that haven't been there, the pier, things like that. And then some of the things that came out. So I think we hit most of the points, because, again, like, that core of the list of, like, the best Jun cards and a proactive slant, we kind of pretty well know what a lot of them are and what the deck's trying to do. Yeah, I think we covered it pretty well.
Play Rain of Filth. Don't.
Oh yeah, Rain of Filth is sick. All right, folks. Thank you so much for watching and or listening, depending on where you're coming from. Playing cEDH tournaments. They're awesome. There's tons of them happening right now. It was really cool that Eric had that amazing top 4 at such a big event. I was happy to get out to, like, a decently sized event near me. It was like about an hour and a half from me. That was, had great prize support, had lots of awesome people there. It just had an amazing time. And, we got to do well and play some Magic on top of that. Thank you so much for watching. As I said, look out for breakdowns for at least Punt City, maybe the tournament I played in, depending on if there's any other news. But with all that being said, thank you so much for watching. And as always, go play cEDH. Have a good one, everybody.